to live here together. We should care about our country together. And if you're not, then we need to consider maybe we need to separate, and what does that look like?
But if there's one thing I think we've learned, it's that the left absolutely believes it should rule over the right.
Exactly.
And that's just authoritarianism in general, this
Right.
idea of a leftist, this weird authoritarian bent.
Whatever the libertarian side of things are.
What? I don't think I've seen Moonlord so out of shape over that one. That's exactly what the left is, an authoritarian bent. It happened, everybody. We gotta watch it. I'm curious. We've seen the Cass Castle before. They usually get up to all kinds of wild hijinks over at the Tim Pool compound, you know, getting nuts with your buddies, skate parks, ollies, tricks, hands to Jesus. They get little RC cars and smash them into each other. All his best friends are his employees. That's another part of it. It's kind of neat, kind of weird, kind of culty. Anyways, speaking of culty, Marjorie Taylor Greene was the latest guest in the Cass Castle. Yes, the QAnon member who is deeply anti-Semitic decided to make a little trip to Tim Pool's compound just to hang out and see how he's doing. But you do get them look at them going nuts. Look at all my employees having fun. Radical. By the way, I'm never gonna hate on their performance in either skateboards or rollerblades, because, like, you know, I fall all over myself all the time, and I'm not on any kind of a moving circle, okay? But I'll still fall all the time, so I can't mock that.
You got it.
Doesn't count as a grind. What's the official grind time? Like, I wasn't actually a skater boy. You know, I said see you later boy, but I did play Tony Hawk. I played a lot of Tony Hawk, and a grind could count after a couple seconds, right? Or did you have to keep the grind going more than, like, is there a set time? Like, is there pre and post grind where you're like, okay, that was 5 seconds, you did it.
And that guy was pretty good on that tiny ass. That's pretty good. It's a way to kind of. This is short.
So this video, which has her, this is like pretty much the thumbnail. This pause I just did is the thumbnail. She doesn't arrive until 13 minutes into the 15-minute and 27-second video. That's where it's like, oh, by the way, it's not clickbait. No, we just knew you'd want to see some, like, come on, some dank memes, some fresh grinding. You know, we thought that's what you came here for. And then on top of that, you get a little cherry on top. Now we're gonna platform the anti-Semite.
Dr. Fauci, for the last time, did you or did you not kill hundreds of dogs? And I will for the last time, it was for the science.
This is actually better content. I'd rather see the cat.
For the science. Yeah, corrlah. That's exactly what it is. What are you making here?
Yeah, I just squeeze some lemon juice and then I mix in this like health stuff.
Oh, he's a mixologist. I didn't know that about Tim.
I was doing an interview with Dan Paul, and I slipped, instead of saying Gestapo, I said Gazpacho. And it is like one of the top trend. Oh, it's trending right now. It's going crazy on Twitter. Yeah, and so here was my.
They're calling her the soup Nazi.
Yeah, they're calling. Yeah. Well, it is over the top. All right, so here was my response.
It's funny.
Changed the design of the EpiPen.
Oh, the thing you sent me.
And so the new
Yeah,
EpiPen.
because they're destroying me right now. I mean, oh my gosh, it's gone crazy. So I said no soup for those who illegally spy on members of Congress, but they will be thrown in the goulash. So I like carried on, but you wouldn't believe some of the stuff. It's like so hilarious. They're making fun of me. Let me find some.
I mean, I think it's good for you.
Oh,
Because they would have to get.
breaking the broth has temporarily replaced the tea around here, thanks to Rep MTG being a dumb bisque.
That's pretty good. It's generated press for you, and it's not.
Here's another one. Enough. At Rep MTG has gone completely lentil.
Are those like haters? Mocking or something?
Oh yeah, they're killing.
Wow, it's a tough crowd.
I guess.
Any reasonable person who hears that is going to be like, what's this? There's nothing bad about it. It's like you said a funny word.
Right.
So all they're doing is giving you more and more attention. And
They are. Yeah. So just I was.
Do we have any bottles down here?
It's good for you. Wow. Yeah, no, that helps your career, of which I am invested in as well. It's good to hear that this is you're getting the reaction that we wanted.
No. Do you want one?
Center left, by the way.
Oh.
They didn't get the vaccine
yeah.
from India that didn't hire black lobbyists.
I think that's everyone.
Covaxin is based on old.
And that's the end, man. I filed this one under it's sadder for me than it is for them because I was trying to watch it for content. And oh wait, there's some cat.
You're using it.
Yeah, the Troy Nels thing's crazy.
So,
There we go.
Yeah,
And that's what this is all about. And that's why we like.
All right, so that was the fun behind the scenes, them getting nuts. Let's see what they were actually talking about on the podcast.
The issue, though, because we had Ron Perlman, he's the celebrity who played Hellboy, come out recently and say Republican states should leave and we should leave. And this discussion about national divorce has been around for a long time. But what people don't understand is that's exactly what happened in the first Civil War. It wasn't like you had all of the states fighting in Congress and then all of a sudden started shooting each other. In fact, what actually happened first was several states said, we out. And they went, okay, bye. And then I actually pulled up from the Library of Congress. In January of 1861, you had 11 states seceding to form the Confederacy. And Lincoln hadn't even been inaugurated until March.
Yeah.
It wasn't until the South started seizing forts that the North said, hey, you can't do this. So what would happen in the event of a national divorce? Sure, California, Illinois, New York might be like, we're going to Canada or something. But then all of a sudden you're going to have one state's got a nuclear arsenal. And they're going to say, we're the true government of...
What a surprise. The topic at hand is Civil War. Because I know Marjorie Taylor Greene has been talking about how, certain states may just need to secede. Who knows? The South shall rise again.
United States of America, and those nukes belong to us. And then one of these states, is whichever faction is in control of DC or whatever, they're going to say, no, it's ours. You can't take it. And we're going to then, relocate these weapons. And that's basically what happened with Fort Sumter.
Let me give two examples of success.
Oh, Canada would take New York so quickly if it was just offered up to them. Are you kidding me? Not only is it like an economic powerhouse, and New York's fucking awesome. New York's probably my favorite city in the United States. It's an absolute blast. I love that city.
Successful secession in history that everybody knows about and everybody forgets about. Mm-hmm. And one's very specific to your case. Ukraine used to be part of the Soviet Union. And they left. There were a lot of those.
What preceded that?
Well, the Soviet Union collapsed. Yeah. So
did it? Wouldn't the Soviet Union call?
Did it? Oh wow, Tim Pool pushing back for once.
To collapse if America sort of fragmented, they would look at us and say, "Oh, your federal government got so unwieldy."
That's true.
You overextended your Federal Reserve and your Army, and you collapsed under your own weight, and now you're separate states.
That's true.
Okay, so it's been done there, but it's also been done in the United States. There's one example, and I was born in the state that seceded.
Wait, that was all it took for that completely bizarre statement to suddenly get wrapped around and be like, oh, it's true. It's true. Yeah, no, he's talking facts.
Nobody talks about, and it successfully seceded West Virginia.
June of 1861. Residents of the western counties of Virginia did not wish to secede along.
Did I see the BMG shell casing with "Let's Go Brandon" engraved? Is it in this one or is it in the previous clip we were watching?
With the rest of the state. This section of Virginia was admitted into the Union as a state of West Virginia on June 20th, 1863.
So they seceded from the...
Holy shit, you're not wrong. Holy fuck. Yeah. Clear as day right there. I'm like tilting my head just when I read this way, I have to go like this. But yeah, you're not wrong. Holy fuck. Damn. I guess that's just totally permissible.
Confederacy.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. But to do so, they had to split a state in half. And it's been totally accepted. We go on with life as if it's normal that a state just said, we're going to separate. They didn't go back together. When Virginia came back.
Okay, one of the fucked up things that liberals like to do is they like to brag about how places like California, for example, is just an economic powerhouse. And it absolutely is. But then they'll use it as some kind of like, yeah, if California ever was its own country, so many of you backward states that live in abject poverty and need all these like handouts from richer states would collapse and fall and stuff like that. They always use that as a kind of a weird, it almost feels like beyond arrogant. It's kind of just like condescending, as if like, yeah, you're all like a bunch of backwards, redneck states and poor, and you depend on us, elite liberals for support. But like, there's something to be said about the fact that if they're talking about actual like fracturing of the United States into separate independent countries, there would be huge economic consequences for doing that. That I don't know if people who are suddenly getting all excited about whatever they're proposing or starting to just like they're doing that plausible deniability thing as well. We're not actually talking about forming our own separate countries. We're just putting questions out there. Just we want to talk about these kind of things. What exactly was the lead up to the Civil War? Why did it happen? And what could be the potential benefit? I'm just asking questions right now, but still, that things like that should be brought up.
Back into the Union. So a state has seceded from a state. It's happened.
What about North and South Carolina, North and South Dakota? Were they once Dakota and Carolina?
No.
Yeah, I think they were always
maybe
No.
as territories
Yeah.
for a brief moment.
Gotcha.
But I think it's naive to believe that the United States is always going to exist in these perfect 50 states under this, under the federal government that keeps expanding and expanding and expanding. And I think it's irrational for people to think that Americans.
Texas requires $7 in federal government handouts for every $2 raised in taxes. Oh, wow.
Are just going to sit idly by while our federal government completely becomes tyrannical and out of control, like we've watched it do over the past year. And no one wants violence. And I'll say again, I'm completely against a civil war, even though the media tries to say I say things like that. I never do. But I do truly believe that if this becomes such a broken nation, and we have one party that is trying to rule over, like the Democrats are trying to rule over Republicans, to the point where they are deciding what opinion we are allowed to say, whether we can stay on social media or we have to leave because we're spreading what they claim is misinformation. If they get to a point where they're saying we're going to control your what you're allowed to do with your body and what you have to have injected into your body, and you have no choice or say, they're coming to the point where they're saying this is what your children have to be taught, and parents, you have no input or say, and your children essentially belong to the state, like some people are actually saying out loud, and that's happening in the state of California and elsewhere. When it gets to that point, you can't just accept or think that Americans are going to accept it. That is when it's okay.
That's exactly what I just described. So it's pretty much, hey, I'm not advocating for violence, and I do not want a civil war, and everyone who knows me knows that I would never advocate for those kind of things. But I'm just going to say that if push comes to shove, because from a combination of us being censored specifically on social media, by the way, the top 10 sites on Facebook are still mostly conservative. It's like Ben Shapiro, Dan Bongino, Ben Shapiro. Anyways, if we get censored on these social media sites, that combined with us having to take a vaccine for, I don't know, whatever they keep saying, health reasons or something. I mean, it may be inevitable. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying I want that or I would endorse it. I'm not saying that, but just saying if it does happen, it could happen.
To start saying, you know what? Just like in a marriage, I don't like the way you're treating me. You either have to change.
Someone in chat made a joke about how it's not actually secession. It's a divorce. Wow, you were on point. That you were predicting the future there.
Asking you to change, which is what Republicans should be saying to Democrats right now. Stop this behavior. You have to change. We all have.
Oh, RC, I completely agree. Like, the same people, right-wing Republicans, they're the ones who want to, enforce forced births, like state-controlled births, as in you don't have autonomy over your own body. The state will force you to give birth. That's the same people who are like, by the way, we also want to do a new rallying cry for my body, my choice. Let's reappropriate that for us willingly, because we have to choose whether or not we want to take a vaccine, and then we don't really get punishment for that in the form of I'm not allowed to go to a movie theater or something to that effect if there's a vaccine mandate in place in that specific state as well.
To live here together, we should care about our country together, and if you're not, then we need to consider maybe we need to separate, and what does that look like?
But if there's one thing I think we've learned, it's that the left absolutely believes it should rule over the right.
Exactly. And that's just authoritarianism in general, this
Right.
idea of a leftist, this weird authoritarian bent.
Whatever the libertarian side of things are.
What? I don't think I've seen Moonlord so out of shape over that one. That's exactly what the left is, an authoritarian bent.
Are the freedom, which includes a large faction of people. They're basically saying, leave me alone. I'll go do my thing. Leave me alone. But they're saying, no, I'm not going to leave you alone. You're going to do as you're told or else.
Yeah.
That doesn't sound like you can have a peaceful divorce. I mean, you've got a husband and a wife, and the wife's saying, I want to leave, and the husband's like, don't you dare or else. I mean, you're going to need more than just a court order. You're going to need police intervention and protections. So maybe You know, when you see people like Ron Perlman, when you see like John Podesta and Donna Brazil in that 2020 scenario they did with the Boston Globe reported on, where they advocated Western states secede from the Union if Donald Trump wins the election again. Yeah. Maybe they will be willing to say, fine, we're out. Right. But I will tell you what I love the most about this trope is that the city urban liberal types are convinced that they will flourish and the red states and Republicans will suffer. And I'm like, do you know how to take care of chickens, for instance? Where do you get your food from? Oh, your avocados from Mexico were shipped in to your in the middle of winter, and you're having strawberries and avocado. You have strawberry yogurt with your avocados. Yeah, okay. If you don't know how to grow your own food, if you don't know how to, and it's not even about growing your own food. We learned this lesson. We planted. You probably understand this. We planted all the tomatoes at once. And that's a big mistake. Right. You plant them 1 week at a time so that the tomatoes ripen not all at once. Otherwise, you're eating 50 tomatoes all at once. We didn't know that because we're a bunch of city folks who moved out to the middle of nowhere. But the people who live in these cities, they get their food shipped in. They do jobs like writing at BuzzFeed.
Okay, I'm not going to deny that like all of us are very detached from where our food comes from. That's like there's no question about that. You don't think about it. You just walk into the store and you're like, I'm hungry, food here. I exchange my money, which was given to me for my labor, in exchange for the food. And then now I'm going to go eat. That's it. So yeah, we're detached from that process. That's for sure. But like, do you think that is exclusive to people who live in cities? Like that's everyone. We all shop at supermarkets. We all get our food through these processes. That's like, it's not simply going to impact cities if it were to go down like that. That would impact all Americans, especially poorer Americans more than other ones. And ones who are more rural may depend a lot more on the transportation of goods and services to that area if they don't have access. Like, what if it's a state that's simply like, it's too hot because of climate change, or the soil is too, like, you know, too acidic or something like that, where, you know, just the idea of having your own little communal farms may become implausible. Like, it's not as if only people in cities are the ones that are just going to suffer en masse if this, you know, whatever you want to call it, inevitable civil war that you seem to keep predicting or pushing for should happen.
Or working for, you know, bureaucratic firms or administrative firms or managerial firms. They're not the ones that, for the most part, are making the machine churn. So in the event there was a major divorce, I think cities are going to just implode. They're going to go nuts.
Yeah, well, Tim, what you're not factoring in is that all of those blue states have the Reddit moderators who walk dogs for 25 hours a week, and I don't know that we could stand to lose them. In all seriousness, one of the issues, and this isn't just a problem with national divorce or the union remaining together or whatever the alternative is here. It's just an issue of the philosophical differences between left and right here, at least as they exist today. It's not so much that right-leaning people are all saying, I want to mind my own business, I want you to mind your own business. There's certainly that faction on the right, but even the right-leaning people who would like to see stronger government action tend to be much more in favor of local solutions, whereas with left-wing people, they feel this unquenchable desire to change things unbelievably far away from them that they have no business meddling in, while problems fester all over their own community. And part of it is because I believe that those external problems are much more abstract, and these are people who aren't really interested in engaging with reality. And it feels really good to say, I'm going to affect change and make the world better without actually doing anything in your own local community. And so they end up voting for policies that will affect the way other people live their lives.
Do they, like, I'm genuinely getting this image now that they think that, like, you know, all the conservative fan base that they've built over these years are going to be just fine if something went down. Like, they've all got a sustainable amount of prepper buckets. They've all loaded up on Tim Pool's prepper buckets. They're all good to go. So if this stuff goes down, we're going to be just all right. It's those liberal elites in the major cities. They're the ones who are just going to fall into utter chaos because every single one of them just lives off avocados. Those are really hard to get in the regions that they're in. And on top of that, they're just really concerned with things that don't concern them. So that's basically what we're talking about here.
Without making any personal sacrifices of their own. And so whether we have a national divorce, whether the country stays together, that tendency is not going to change with those people.
I've got another potential solution than national divorce as a solution to, like, the corruption, the revolving door of people coming out, people getting bribed. Maybe we can set up a direct republic. Right now, for a long time, I've been thinking, I don't think we need the House of Representatives. I used to talk to Mike Gravel, and he wanted to set up what's called the National Initiative, the idea that every American citizen has the right to write laws and pass it into the Senate. And we would all create our own representative from our state, so we'd have 50 representatives of the National Initiative. We in his world, we still had the House of Representatives, but I see them getting bribed, and it's a vulnerability in the system. What if it was a smart contract? And all of the representatives, these 800,000 people, vote for the way they want their contract to act while it's in service.
You imagine the 400,000 different things that would have to go through the Senate on a regular basis. It's like, I hate birds. Can we outlaw birds? Yeah, them birds is always looking at me funny. Bring it to the Senate. Ratify this immediately, please. That also doesn't make up for the huge problem of the American Senate. The Senate is not representational of the American populace. Everyone here probably knows that every single state gets 2 senators. Doesn't matter if that state has 10 million people or 20. Each one gets those 2 senators. That's not representational of the population of the United States. It's a very, that system should be updated immediately.
And as long as it's there, it's just voting yay or nay as the populace directs it.
I find the notion of going to more of, I know you call it a republic, but more of a democratic.
Yeah, that seems that doesn't seem like a Gravel inspired idea. That seems very crypto, as in why don't, or just libertarian crypto, why don't we give everyone the ability to actually pass laws? And then it's okay, so how does that work? It's well, every single person who wants to can just draft up their own bills, and then those go directly to the Senate, and then the Senate can vote on it, and we'll have our representatives in the Senate decide whether or not they like a bill. And it's well, just on anything, I guess, right? Again, the birds are looking at me funny, and we got to get rid of them birds.
Type solution, terrifying.
Well, I would call it a direct republic. It's actually less of a democratic solution, or it's equally democratic.
Let me be fair and condemn my colleagues at the same time. I don't blame AOC for what she does.
Wouldn't separation show the people in the red states that if they split, that all things that the Republicans used to focus their attention on, avoiding public policy, will help people that are now gone? But you also have to factor in what a disaster it would be. And the reason I hate the liberal arrogance of being you wouldn't exist had it not been for all the production of blue states like California and stuff like that, is that a lot of the industry that happened in a lot of the the states that used to be very big into the factory work and stuff like that, because those corporations got to a certain size, either they resorted to automation, or before that was a big thing, they were outsourcing. So whole factories would close down, and that turns these prosperous towns into desert towns. And so now you've got this desert town that has huge problems with addiction and stuff like that. That alone, if you leave it and all of a sudden say, well, on top of which the states that aren't pulling their weight, they're no longer going to get any kind of support from either the federal government or anything like that, and we're just going to leave them to survive on their own, which is kind of if Tim Pool is proposing this, he thinks in his ideal scenario this would work out great for him and his audience specifically, because his audience obviously has been buying his prepper buckets. They're nicely insecure, so they've got up their food and supplies. They're going to do just fine. And then all these liberal elites in the cities, they're going to fall apart completely. Even though that ignores a lot of things, such as a lot of those major cities are along ocean lines, which means that they are port cities, which means that they get to the direct supplies that come in from other countries. It's not just avocados from Canada or whatever the fuck they're talking about. A lot of stuff comes in from China, as well as other countries that you do international trade with. It's not as simple as if we just did this, things would work out great for us, but it's the city folk who would just perish in the project, of which we're, I guess, kind of okay with. I don't even know what the proposition is here. There's no book club. Thank you very much for the Prime. Appreciate that. Also, the fact every state but Texas has a nationally controlled and connected power grid, that's a huge thing to consider as well, right? Would they then say that every single state needs to privatize their own power grids because that's worked out so great for Texas so far? None of them will even begin to discuss the century of work that anarchists have been doing describing how direct democracy can be structured, particularly in a more technologically advanced situation. No, it would be refreshing if that's kind of the philosophy that Boone Lord has been indoctrinating himself with, and all of a sudden he's going to talk about actual power structures and how those things can work. Could you imagine Boone Lord sitting up and it's the Zapatistas, I don't know if any of you have heard about this, but they apparently have a more direct democracy over there, and that they don't believe in unjust hierarchies, and they can still have structures that govern their people, but at the same time they actually have direct democratic control. That conversation would not last very long.
95% of my colleagues, I don't question their motives or blame them for their behavior, even though it's
Alex Jones Zapatista
I blame the people that voted for them. They're actually responding to the people that elected them. That's even you can say all you want about the lobbyists and the money, and I have talked about how the committees are messed up that way, but the individuals who get elected are fairly reflective.
What bothers me is when they say, when you vote for me, I'm going to say yes to dog walkers, and then they get in, they're like, I'm going to vote no on that. And you're like, what recourse do I have now as a voter? I already, this is what I chose.
Yeah. Well,
I think what
in
we
the
should
House,
do,
every
though,
2 years, you could throw them out.
That is true. We have to be
That's
elected
a long
every
time.
2 years.
In today's age, 2 years is forever. It's so long.
But hold on. So
much can happen in a day now.
When you get a Ron Paul, I mean, how many terms did he serve? He served a lot. For a long time.
He served for a while, and then he came back in like '96 because he got.
I told you when that like r/anti-work story broke that was going to be it was going to have a net negative effect on the left because everyone is going to amplify this, and it plays into every stereotype that they always talk about. There it is, just laid before you. I knew it. Leftists are just entitled. They don't want to work. They don't care about that. They think dog walking is a arduous chore. Like I knew this would happen.
Disillusioned. Didn't think it was fixable.
But my understanding is that
came back after he ran for president.
My understanding is the reason he won is because people really like him, right? Is that true? I don't live in his district, so was it that people just vote Republican? It didn't matter. It was Ron Paul.
The reason most people win is people like them.
Nancy Pelosi.
They love her. Oh, they love her out there.
San Francisco. No,
they love her in San Francisco.
You know, I'd like to think that people elect an ideology but in reality, they look for people they like.
They do.
What's the like about Marjorie? I think you're correct. We just can't live with these people anymore. If they like Nancy Pelosi and find something good in her, I'm just lost. I don't know.
Joining my movement.
You must find the love for all
humans. He was joking. Don't worry. Plausible deniability. He's not actually advocating for that.
Humans.
I have a second thing.
I can't understand that worldview. I just can't.
I just want to throw one more thing in here about national divorce. I sort of mentioned that even if you break up the federal government, even if all the states go their separate way, one group is still going to have a desire to control. And obviously, they couldn't do that to the federal government at that point. But when you look at so much of the actual censorship that the American people are facing, it's coming from large corporations.
Yes.
And that kind of thing is always going to be weaponized. I mean, national divorce or not.
It would depend on your states and how they're set up. But here's something. Here's a second thing that I think everyone should think about while we're fighting out our differences here in the United States.
They know how to bring up populist talking points that are going to resonate with people, but they never explore them. It's like, oh, there is a problem with major corporations and the way that they have this kind of dictatorial control over what they do, and we don't have any input on it. It's like, that is true. Anyways, we're going to move on to the next one.
And among one another as Americans. The biggest thing that upsets me is, as Americans, we aren't coming together as a whole and saying we can put aside our petty differences and our opinions. What we should be standing together on is we should be standing against China. We should be standing against globalism. Because if you want to talk about authoritarianism and you want to talk about people that really want to rule over us, China is a direct threat to our entire.
Why do you think everyone is obsessed with culture war issues, though? It's because the right won't shut the fuck up about it. That's the 24-hour news cycle with Tucker Carlson. It's just like, hey, by the way, did you know Mr. Potato Head is no longer a Mr.? Hey, by the way, did you know Minnie Mouse is now androgynous? Hey, by the way, did you know Dr. Seuss is canceling himself from the grave? Hey, did you know? Like, that's all you fucking talk about. It's either going to be that or it's going to be horrifying policies that, once again, police people's bodies. In this case, like your current target du jour happens to be the trans community all the time. It's like, oh, or CRT, or your like limited understanding of what CRT is. And it's like, oh, they're coming after the children. Oh, they're doing this. Oh, they're doing that. Oh, they're coming after the children's toys. Oh, they're coming after Dr. Seuss. Oh, that's all you ever fucking broadcast to people. So that's what they care about. It's like, no wonder they don't talk about serious issues. But I like that once it gets down to, okay, let's talk about serious issues. China. We have to talk about China and the globalists. TM.
Existence. And let me tell you something else. China is embedded in the United States. There are politicians, people that
I've heard there's Chinese people living in America. Did you know that? Has anyone brought that up? There's actual Chinese people who they're here. They're here right now. I've seen them. It's true.
Thomas and I work with that are completely sold out. If you have not read Peter Schweitzer's book, the new book that has come out, I highly encourage you to read it. You would be shocked. There's a whole chapter on Dianne Feinstein. That woman has been there probably longer than all of us have been alive. They have made so much money through corporate connections, policy, deals that she was.
Please get your global geopolitics and information from a QAnoner, everyone. Please put them onto your podcasts and just let them talk about this stuff. Please amplify their voices. Get QAnon into the mainstream. Here we go.
Willing to make through her powerful position as a senator.
with her husband, stock deals, money, investments. I mean, it is outrageous that this actually happened, but it's not just them. It's happened over and over and over again with people in power right here in our country. And this is the kind of thing that I think we should come together on.
Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL.
It's true. It's true. We got to worry about China. It's got them and their soup. They've got a secret army of people who are going to take you away from your living conditions.
Do you enjoy the Serfs but prefer not to have to use your eyeballs? Many are saying this. Well, we've got the solution for you. It's the Serf Times in podcast form. Available on most major podcasting networks now. If you enjoy it, please consider leaving a good review and feedback because it really helps the show out, apparently, and it's free, just like the podcast.
To our gods, Xander Corvus and Peyton L. Just, we beseech thee to smite down our enemies. To our monarch, Tom Spiker, we are but your humble court jesters, here to amuse you. To our lords, Trevor R., we give thanks for this spit of land for us to eke out this meager existence. To our knights, Merid, Cheryl Alvarez, Ruby Kelly, Ellie Leslie, Alex P., Brandon, Words Greenwood, Nate, that one guy, Hagbird Celine, Matthew Scarborough, Stellar Vision, Ariane McCarthy, Daniel Sutton, Coulter Smith, Val 9000, Jenna Tall, Quiet 185, Anna Loves Riley, Omni, Riley and Anna, Poodlehawk, The Tim Caucus, Multi Mondi, Trevor Yanis, Lemmy 101, Anthropophojak, Saren 42, Catherine, Radical Maniac, Ramon Acosta, Nkosin, Violent Orchard, Sophie Baby, Political Puppy, Andreas Chiringuito, Zach Christensen, Josh Mickelson, Todd Buckingham, and Todd Lajeunesse. We raise our flag in a veil, and we salute you, our friends.